Hey, Jeremiah.
Hey, how's it going, Jaime?
Oh, it's going pretty good, man. Having some troubles, and I was hoping you'd be able to help me out with something.
Sure. What's going on?
So, I am learning to become a cybersecurity specialist, specifically in the realm of PCIDSS. And
Awesome.
there is a requirement that's in this framework that has me a little stumped.
Okay.
After reading it, I was like, man, if only I knew someone who worked in network admin or network security or something in the wireless realm or whatever, right? And then I remembered you. And remind me what your title is again?
Yeah, I'm a wireless network engineer.
A wireless network engineer. This sounds you I think you're going to be the perfect resource that I need to help me with this requirement, man, okay?
Awesome. I'm glad to help any way I
Okay.
can.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the requirement that I'm stumped with, and I'm hoping you can help me out with that, okay?
Sure thing.
All right. So, like I said, I'm learning to be a cybersecurity consultant for PCIDSS, and there's a list of requirements. There's 12 requirements in there that all have to deal with protecting cardholder data. So,
Okay.
this one in particular is a sub requirement under 1.1, and this one is 1.2.3. Here's what it says, Jeremiah. It says,
Okay.
install perimeter firewalls between all wireless networks and the cardholder data environment and configure these firewalls to deny or, if traffic is necessary for business purposes, permit only authorized traffic between the wireless environment and the cardholder data environment.
Okay.
Now there's
All
some
right.
testing procedures and some guidance on there to kind of understand it, and I get it from a high level, from words only. I understand that data that comes in it has to be make sure like there's no viruses, or it's not bad stuff that's coming into the business, and vice versa, that when data leaves the business, it's not just kind of anyone can grab that data, right? So I kind of get that idea from it, but I was looking at some network diagrams, Jeremiah, and I got to tell you, the diagrams are busy. I feel intimidated. I don't have a big background in IT or technology, and I'm just like I'm losing my mind, man.
It
I'm
can be a
literally
little overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. Some network diagrams there's just a lot going on. So
okay.
without knowing it, I can explain if you have maybe an example to put up on the screen or something.
Sure,
I can
sure.
speak to.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Okay. I see that.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
it's all foreign to me, man. I see a bunch of icons, I see some boxes, I see things in there, and I am just like, I do not understand what I'm looking for here when it relates to this requirement of 1.2.3 for me.
Okay, sure. So based off of what you gave me, the requirement is um, we need to have firewalls in between the credit data environment and any Wi-Fi networks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first things first, this network diagram. It's really just a map that shows how any of the data is connected to other parts of the network. So all of this is connected together, as you can see through these lines.
Okay.
Um, Depending on where you begin, which I think on the left-hand side here, I see this is your credit data environment, and
Yep.
these are servers. So these computers pretty much have information stored on them that are probably storing, transmitting, or processing most of that data, that credit card data you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
You can see here how there's a firewall listed right outside of this, or right in the beginning of this box here,
Uh-huh. I see that.
representing that data environment. So that's good because this firewall will be able to control whatever comes in and out. And a little bit on firewalls, if you've never heard of firewalls before, these are devices that act kind of like a router. So a router with a name also is just something that routes traffic and data on the internet to a certain location, right?
Kind of like a highway does for vehicles,
Exactly, yeah.
like the roads.
So
They direct you this way or that way, or whichever other way.
exactly. So same way with highways and roads where there's signs for certain areas you're trying to get to. A router has a routing table, which is just like an address book. Okay, this is where I want to go. This is the address to it. This is how to get there. And the addresses that, without getting too technical, but the addresses on those tables are IP addresses. That's how you know exactly where you're going. Each device on here has an IP address attached to it. So if you looked at this firewall now, and now that you know it kind of acts like a router does,
Mm-hmm.
the difference here with a firewall is a firewall works on a set of rules, a list of rules.
Okay.
So those rules are either to allow or deny certain traffic, internet traffic and data, right? So let's say you want all the data to flow in that is necessary to process all of the credit card data, but you don't want any of this data that's on these servers to flow out because it would then be out in the open, right? Like you see T-Mobile network here and AT&T network, that's just
Mm-hmm.
the internet. That's anybody could get it now if it goes out that way without passing through a firewall.
Okay. 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 That makes sense. That makes sense. So I want my data to be secure. If I want my data to be secure, I want it to travel on a highway that has some security on it, right? So like if I'm driving down the highway and I want to stay safe, I want to make sure that all the security features on a highway are there for me, like the bumpers, like police is on there to make sure everyone's doing what they need to do. If there's tolls that we're directed into those certain, we're siloed into our pieces so that we can make sure everything's as safe as possibly can be, the road signs, the speed limits, all that stuff. So when you talk about that digitally, you're saying that as data is moving through a firewall, that helps direct the traffic. It helps direct
Correct.
the right kind of traffic.
Correct. It's
And
it's
then a
kind of like
router,
the tollways that you mentioned. Those tollways are designed to only allow people who are supposed to be on those tollways, right? That's why they have the cameras on them. So if you do happen to go on there, you're going to get, ticketed or at least sent a fee for using that tollway. That's
yes.
similar here, except when the firewall sees traffic that's not supposed to be there, uh, different than a tollway, it just doesn't allow you to go through it. You're just stuck. You can't go out in through that tollway, for example, and you can't go through to that data environment. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yes, yes. I'm following you. Okay.
But yeah, that's it. Do you have any other questions, more along the lines of anything else you see here? Because a lot of these icons sometimes are interchangeable. It can be kind of confusing.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
So not all icons are the same. Like, and I did a Google search for network diagrams to see if I could understand more. And I noticed it felt like looking at network diagrams, it was almost like no two were alike in the examples that I found.
Right. And this is primarily because a lot of the environments that are created or network diagrams that are created uh, are for specific businesses that have different needs, right? So if a company doesn't really need all these servers, then they might have only one in their data environment. And it just might not be as large as other network diagrams are. So yes, you're right. Um,
Think-
Go ahead.
No, okay, so that makes sense. I feel like I got a good understanding now of the data that wants to come out of the cardholder data environment and why that firewall is there. I think I would understand data going in, but I'm still a little confused on when the requirement says it says install a perimeter firewall between wireless networks and the cardholder data. Where I don't know that I feel like I have really understood the wireless piece to that.
Okay, let's look at a wireless network here. You have one on this side right here.
Okay, I see that it
So
says Wi-Fi subnet.
hmm now when it comes to IT and data flow and all of that, data is typically more secure when it's connected hardwire, right? You remember connecting devices through a hardwire and Ethernet cable.
Yep, I remember those days.
That's typically more secure because there's not that there's no way to tamper with it, but there's a lot less ways to tamper with it. When it comes to a Wi-Fi network, we're just talking about signals flowing through the air. And nowadays, people can hook up all sorts of different devices to just broadcast and pick up and monitor signals nearby, and could
Okay.
easily try to see that traffic. believe it or not, through the air. So that network all on its own is not as secure as it could be, like a lot of these other devices are, just directly connected to each other. Now, that's only important because when it comes to anything that you might have on this end that might be potentially insecure, because this
Hmm.
doesn't look like it's inside of a data environment, a credit card data environment. This looks like it's just on its own, right?
Right.
Well, let's say somebody is on here and gets hacked, or they click on some sort of virus link, some kind of phishing link, and now that virus tries to travel through the network and see where it can go. This firewall, because it's not the typical kind of traffic that it receives going in and out, and based off of other factors too, there's different ways to determine what is good traffic or bad traffic. We'll
Uh-huh.
have rules set in place to prevent that kind of traffic. So from this point, any data coming out of this Wi-Fi network will stop right here if it's not supposed to be going through there, and therefore protect all of these other devices that are on the connected network,
Including the cardholder data environment.
including the cardholder data environment. Now, this is even sort of in a way protected twice because there's a firewall on the way out of this Wi-Fi network,
Uh-huh.
but another firewall on the way in to this credit data environment. Excuse me.
Okay. Okay. It's clicking. Give me a second here. So the data that comes in from the internet or this Wi-Fi, before it gets to the rest of the company or the organization's devices, it's going to pass through a firewall to make sure like that layer of security is there for that data.
Correct.
The
Hmm.
bad data is going to get stopped there at the firewall. The good data is going to continue on to any of the devices behind the firewall, including, in this case, the cardholder data environment, or even in the example that we have in here, that other firewall that's outside. It's going to hit that and just do like another double check. The same data that passed through the first firewall should be able to pass through the second firewall also, right?
It really depends. So this firewall on the left might have a different set of rules than this firewall on the right. So you see this one might, let's say, for example, and which is pretty common in a lot of enterprise networks, nobody should be looking at inappropriate websites and all that stuff in a work environment. So none of that would be allowed on here.
So no
That would
looking at
be
my Pokemon collection cards, I guess is maybe
no
what they would
Pokemon
say.
surfing or nothing like that on here, which sometimes some firewalls also filter content as well, right? Like no ability to actually look at those certain websites. But
Or
let's
like
say, for
social media
example,
sites, right?
or
Because
social
my
media sites.
my job sometimes they tell me I can't go into those popular social media sites.
Correct, like Facebook, and here's the reason why, because let's say you're in Facebook and you're messaging somebody and you get a random message or an advertisement from somebody else and you decide to click on it. Well, it's just harmless, right? You're on a social media website, but if you clicked on that link and you were connected to this Wi-Fi network that happens to also be linked in some way through other devices to the work environment or
Uh
this
huh.
credit data environment, that's a vulnerability to the company that could potentially expose them to something malicious. And it was all just a harmless link.
Okay. Okay. Wow. That's spawning other questions I have, but we can save those for another time because I will want to bring this back up because just so you know, so you can start getting your brain ready for next time I ask you.
Sure.
This is making me think of some of the requirements that I've read over that regard something called a DMZ or I think it's called a demilitarized zone, right?
Yep, that's
And
correct.
so, but I don't want to get into that right now. But just know that I'm probably going to ask you about that again in the future. Okay.
Sure,
So,
there are a lot of things that come into, the whole IT environment and data security, and even more specifically for credit card data security. But we can definitely find some time later on to talk about all those little intricacies because it all ties in and it all is very fascinating to me, and I think a lot of other people too have never really had the time to look into it.
awesome. Okay. I think I feel a lot better about tackling this requirement when it says, again, 1.2.3 says install perimeter firewalls between all wireless networks and the cardholder data environment. Oh, that was a question I also had real quick.
Sure.
So I heard we're using firewalls a lot, but this says perimeter firewalls. Is there a difference between that, or is that just
Yes, there is a difference. So, for example, if let's say we took this firewall that's right here on the left
mm-hmm.
and we put that inside of this box, and let's say we just put it right in front of this PC right here.
Okay.
Well, that firewall would be specifically to protect whatever's behind it, right? So this PC right here would now be protected even within this data environment.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we didn't take this and put it in there just to move it, but we instead got another one like it and put it right there in front of that PC. That's more the better example of what I
Okay.
meant. Now you have two layers of security for this one PC and one layer of security for this entire environment here.
Environment. So
Now
then,
that's, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. No, I was going to say, so then does that mean if we have two firewalls, one that protects the environment and then one that protects any one or multiple items in that environment, that's a perimeter firewall?
Yeah, the environment one that protects the environment is the perimeter firewall. It really would depend on what you're speaking to and what relation, right? So if you're speaking about the center is the PC, then we're
Uh-huh.
talking about what's the perimeter for that device, right? That would be right outside of it. But in this case, I know that this requirement is speaking to the perimeter of that whole credit data environment. So this would be the perimeter firewall, right on the outside before it goes
So
anywhere else.
it's not a brand. It's not like I can go to the store and buy my favorite brand of cereal, right? So it's not like a Kellogg cereal. It's not like a Post cereal or anything like that.
Oh no, no,
This is
nothing like
just,
that.
they just call it a perimeter firewall as long as it's outside of the environment that it's protecting. It's
Right, or more
oh,
specifically, right on the perimeter of that environment.
so if there was like another computer outside, like let's say that firewall was a computer, and then we move that firewall past the computer, it would no
Hmm.
longer be a perimeter firewall because it's not outside just the environment. It's outside of that computer now and the environment.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
there's some ways that you could move it around, and like I said before, the business requirements would determine how those are moved around, right? What they actually need as a company.
Uh-huh.
Keep in mind, a lot of these computers, just like your computer at home and anyone else's computers, now come nowadays with firewalls installed. They're software based though, like the Windows firewall.
Yes, yes,
That
you're
one's a
right.
software or what they call a host based. Host specifically just meaning that computer, host based firewall. So in IT security, it's all about layers. So layers of security is really the best way to secure your system or any data that you're trying to protect, because as much as we'd like to think that we're absolutely secure, and I hope this doesn't scare anybody, but the whole security thing is really a matter of when somebody decides to try to mess with you, because there is always a way for people to get into your systems if you just relied on basic stuff that is told about out there, like just change your password every so often and blah, blah, blah. That does help and makes it even harder for other people. So the mindset really needs to be, how hard can we make it for a hacker or a malicious person to try to get into our systems?
Hmm.
And that's the battle that a lot of big companies have, is the balance between security and convenience. Convenience for big companies being, how much is it going to cost us?
Yeah.
And so more convenience, less security. More
Right.
security, less convenience. If
That
we're going to have
reminds
to,
me of how people get upset when they have to change their passwords all the time, or the multi-factor authentication. It's like, man, why do I got to keep doing this? Like, well, you can keep doing that and be safe, or not do that and be less safe. And
yeah.
all it takes is one time for someone to get my data, and I'm going to be like, I wish I would have had two-factor authentication on.
Yep. It's already happened to a few relatives of mine, unfortunately. And
Oh
after that,
no.
I've had to, and see, that's another thing. Like, I mean, we could go have a whole nother segment on this,
Yeah,
on
I know.
home
I'm going out
security and all
into
that.
outer space here, so
But it's
well,
so intriguing.
yeah. Okay, so then again, I feel a lot better. 1.2.3 saying install perimeter firewalls between all wireless networks and the cardholder data environment, and configure these firewalls to deny or, if traffic is necessary for business purposes, permit only authorized traffic between the wireless environment and the card holder data environment. Man,
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much, Jeremiah. I think this is going to be so helpful. I think it's going to help my friends out too. And I appreciate your time. I know you're a
You're
busy man.
welcome. I'm glad
So
it helped. And if you have any other questions on it, feel free to ask. I'm happy to help out any way I can.
you bet. All right, Jeremiah. Well, you have a great day, okay?
Okay, you too. Take
All
care.
right. Thanks. Bye.